A proposal has come forth for BYU and Utah to leave the Big 12. Here's why that would actually be really good for college football, given the context. Yeah, this is the Locked On Big 12, Locked On Utes crossover. You're going to like it.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to a Locked On Big 12, Locked On Utes crossover. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. And if you're not, you're probably hearing that guy, JT Westersill of Locked On Utes. You can find both of us at lockedonbig12.supercast.com, lockedonutes.supercast.com for the everydayers who want ad-free listening. We will start BYU, Utah, Arizona. Why kicking them out of the Big 12 or them moving to a new conference would be good for college football. But wait for the catch, wait for the caveat. Then, that's weird. On 3 has Utah making the college football playoff in 2026. Why could that be legitimate? And we'll finish it off with Utah basketball. Will the sun ever shine again? If you hit subscribe, we get to keep our jobs. JT, here's what I'm going off of. I've seen a lot, like Josh Pate's done this, On 3's done this. How to fix college football, the perfect FBS realignment. Well, Next Round Live posted, what if conferences were just based on geography? What if we did this the right way and allowed like the Deep South, Ole Miss, Auburn, Alabama, but also UAB and Troy to all play together and evened out the playing field of college football? Now, in doing this, you'd see Arizona, Baylor, Texas, TCU, the Texas schools, Arizona, kind of southwest schools together. And you'd see Utah, BYU, Boise State, Washington State. JT, one of the worst parts about college football now is the lack of regionality. To me, it sounds bogus to have Utah and BYU out of the Big 12. It would hurt the Big 12. But if we tomorrow got a blank slate on college football and could just make this thing perfect, wave a wand and build the exact realignment that would make college football pure again, old school again, it's putting regional rivals together. And that's something I think this sport is seriously lacking.
Yeah, it does lack it. I think when I see an idea like this, the only way it would work to me is, can we get the Mountain West schools in this instance up to the same level as Utah, BYU? Because if that's not the case, then half the season is cupcakes. Like, obviously, Boise State is capable of having the season where they're really good. But for the most part, I see Utah State, I see Colorado State, I see Air Force, and I see not a lot of great competitive games. And yes, it's obviously awesome when your team wins, but I think I enjoy, one of the things we love about college football is that it has to go out there and be earned on the field. And yes, anything can happen, as we mentioned, but it's a lot more likely that Utah, BYU, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, every single year, maybe Colorado, if they can figure it out, are playing in the conference title game than any of those other teams. So I understand what they're trying to do here, but unfortunately we don't live in a perfect world where the resources are equal, especially in today's age, right? So I don't love this map. I'm down to try and change things up. I will say, though, we just did the whole conference realignment thing. I'm not exactly itching to try and do it again, Drake, but at least Utah and BYU are together. That's a positive.
You're not itching to go to the Big Ten? Come on. Come on.
I think a lot of people, if they could, I think a lot of people would. But like you also mentioned, like the travel and everything, Utah versus Rutgers would have me really fired up about the Big Ten, right?
Oh, yeah, of course. So that's where, today's conversation, this opened up, and I've been thinking about it a lot. If we could fix college football, there's a way to fix college football. And this is where a lot of listeners have been in the comment section that have talked about, hey, I miss Oklahoma State. I miss seeing Oklahoma play Texas Tech in a conference game. There is people who miss Utah and Oregon. I get that. I completely understand that. And rebuilding that, in my mind, would be awesome. Now, it forfeits getting to cover Utah and BYU and Colorado and schools like that who would go away. But if we could just start over college football, I think we'd do it a lot differently. And here's where I'd push back a tad, is there was a day where Utah was Boise State, where TCU was Boise State, where they didn't get the love they deserved, and they were winning games at the mid-major level. And not to say that Air Force is that, but I would like to pose the question, if you added a school like Air Force or Colorado State and gave them a more even playing field, does that rising tide lift all boats? Is there a world in which we say, hey, Houston, come to the Big 12 and start winning. Hey, BYU, come to the Big 12 and start winning. It feels like if you put them all together and say, hey, you're getting an even revenue distribution from the conference, their TV deal, that's where Colorado State could compete with Colorado and Utah.
But and I would love the idea, but unfortunately, it's not happening, right? We see, you mentioned Houston. That's the good one. Cincinnati, UCF. These ones, maybe for a week, like Cincinnati, right, where they were up there for a little bit, but then they came crashing down to earth pretty quickly again, right? So that's where, to me, I would love it if we could get all these teams in the conference and have it be equal. But unfortunately, with the NIL factors coming in, right, like BYU just landed AJ DeMonza. There are probably one of two Big 12 schools that could have pulled something like that off. It's BYU and it's Tech, and that's it. So for me, I love the idea of trying to get these teams up, and the travel aspect would be exciting. But at the same time, a lot of these matchups, like even if we just look at some of these other conferences, like you were on the South Central a second ago, that's just LSU and A&M, and that's it right now. Like, and respect to Houston, like, and they just beat LSU at a bowl game, right? But for the most part, that would just be run by two teams. So unfortunately, you just can't get the conferences and the teams up to that level, or else I would find this a lot more enjoyable in terms of the lack of travel and building some of those regional rivalries. Utah getting to play Oregon again is something you mentioned. I would love that about this, but it's I just don't see how the dots connect overall too. And hey, I know you don't want to lose Utah and BYU covering them in the Big 12 either, do you, sir?
Well, no, and I would probably be the host of Locked On Northwest with BYU, Washington, Oregon, alongside Spencer McLaughlin.
There you go, yeah.
That's where, if you actually broke college football down to a fully regional sport, you do have issues with. There's the Great Lakes, which would be Michigan, Ohio State,
I know.
Michigan State, and then the MAC. So Bowling Green, Akron, Kent State, Ohio, Toledo. That's how it would divvy out. But then there are some really intriguing looks at, again, going back like the North Central, what that would be. Arkansas and Iowa State and Iowa, Missouri, Kansas State, kind of that heartland of America, Oklahoma State, Nebraska. That would be awesome. I think what, for me, this conversation opens up is an air of nostalgia about college football, kind of what we miss about college football. And it is Oregon and Utah. It's the fact that we won't get that again in a conference matchup, at least not for a while. That is JT Westerso of Locked On Utes. Let's go Big 12 centric here in a conversation that is very apropos in 2026. The Utah Utes will make the college football playoff. Not my words or JT's even. This is a Locked On Big 12 Locked On Utes crossover. Oh, today's show is brought to you by Mazda. Moving the game forward with Mazda. Look, Mazda, for those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. And this week, you know what moved the game forward this week? Well, that would be the TCU women's basketball team. They will host College Game Day for the first time coming up this weekend against the Baylor Bears in Schollmeyer Arena. Reminds us what it really takes to raise the bar. It's what TCU's doing. The extra work off the court, dialing in every detail, giving you the extra fire and that I never quit kind of grit. Put the same passion into every Mazda model. Highlights make the real. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you with Mazda. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is where I go during the NBA season for their NBA sweepstakes. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live, in person? FanDuel's giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future. You'll automatically be entered for a shot at winning 2 tickets and a trip to the NBA Finals. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole shebang. You're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run. This is the perfect time to lock it in. FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel.com for that profit boost for a chance at an NBA Finals trip. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA is FanDuel. I want to remind you, if you love Locked On Big 12 and Locked On Utes, the Everydayer Club is for you. Ad-free listening. You listen every day, might as well get it ad-free. That is Supercast. LockedOnBig12.supercast.com. LockedOnUtes.supercast.com to become an Everydayer. That is JT Wisterso of Locked On Utes. JT, Brett McMurphy of On 3 has released his way too early college football playoff prediction. And not BYU. No, sir, not BYU. Not the resurging Houston. No. Not the portal spending, the new Oklahoma State. No, he's got the Utah Utes in the college football playoff. What say you?
It's possible. I don't think we're sitting here today. When you look at a Big 12 power rankings, it's Tech 1, it's BYU 2, then it's a mess, right? You mentioned.
Do you agree with that, by the way? Do you agree with that?
I do, actually, even though I'm the Utah guy, right? Like you
even,
just look at
addendum, even without Parker Kingston for BYU.
Yeah, I think so. I still think I look at the overall talent. I look at the run game there, and I think that right? Hey, this is the Utah guy, right? I've seen Utah win the Big 12, not Big 12, excuse me, but the Pac-12 without a super dynamic passing game, and you figure out a way to make it work through the air, and then you have the QB, you have the running back, you have the defense to get it done. I still believe BYU has that, even though also obviously Jay Hill not there anymore either. But I still think they deserve to be right up there with Tech as the favorites in this conference. But I don't think it's crazy to have Utah in the college football playoff, especially when you look at the schedule. Because if you look at this Utah roster on paper right now versus last year, I think they got worse. You lose all 5 starters on what was one of the 5 best offensive lines in the country. And you lose all your talent along the defensive line too. All the starters there are gone too. You get worse. But at the same time, you look at the schedule. Oh, BYU comes to us. Houston comes to us. Arkansas comes to us which matters for playoff reasoning. Toughest road game at Arizona. That still feels very winnable. I'm curious to see if Arizona can go have a really strong year once again, like they did last year. So for Utah, it's Devin Dampier, right? Being the guy, maybe use Bird Ficklin in some fun and dynamic ways. I think Morgan Scalley is going to be a pretty seamless transition from Kyle Whittingham to Morgan. He learned under him. He knows the culture that he wanted to establish. He knows what it takes to win at the highest level. I think this Utah defense is still going to be really good. Yeah, they lost some guys in the portal, but they've lost guys in the past and still managed to be a good defense. Granted, run defense fell off at the end of the year. We know that, but still finished as the second best total defense in the Big 12. So yeah, am I sitting here today saying Utah is going to be a playoff team? Personally, no. Could I absolutely see them getting in? Yeah, especially when I look at that schedule, Drake.
Yeah, let's go to that schedule. And the Idaho, your favorite, obviously. Arkansas, your favored, obviously. Utah State, yep. At Iowa State. I think Iowa State's a 4-8 team next year. Mm-hmm. That sucks because I love their fan base. I love their people.
Great fan base.
How do you recoup after that? Iowa State is a win on the road. Probably one of those gross 11 a.m. kickoff, 10 a.m. kickoff games, Mountain Time. Then Kansas at home. That's a win. At Colorado, you're favored in that game. In the first 6 games that Utah plays, they should go 6-0. There's a very good window for them to go 6-0 before they get to Houston. Cincinnati should be a win. BYU, Arizona, TCU, West Virginia. The back half of the schedule is much tougher, and Utah could still finish 7-5, could still finish 8-4. But JT, I see a pretty clear 6-0 right there.
I do too. You mentioned it, all those teams in there, and even the back half, right? Like a TCU. Yeah, you got to go to a TCU. I don't know what TCU is going to look like next year. I'm very intrigued by that. Cincinnati loses Sorsby. So like you mentioned, that should be a win. Also, Houston has had a really strong year last year. But going and winning in Utah still takes a pretty special team if you look over the last few years outside of 2 years ago. Yes, 2 years ago was rough for this Utah team. But overall, when they have their starting quarterback or even just a really good team that's firing on all cylinders, it takes the Oregons, it takes a Tech, it takes a caliber of a team capable of making the 12-team playoff to go into Salt Lake City and get a win. Whether it's the altitude, the crowd noise, the stadium, the way they are too, and this Utah defense, they just play better at home. It takes a lot to win. Can Houston do that? They possibly can, but that's not foregone conclusion. Even when Utah had their really rough year, they didn't make a bowl game. BYU barely squeaked out of there with a W, right? And controversial because of that one call as well, too. I'm not trying to say that it was a bad call. I'm just saying it was a controversial one, right? The Arizona one, as we mentioned. There's just a lot of winnable games. Like, what is West Virginia going to be like at the end of the season? I have no idea. Are they going to be a team that finds their footing in year 2 under Rich Rod, or is it going to be we got to hit the portal hard again? This year 2 of this experiment did not work out. So Utah's schedule to me unquestionably got easier. I think they upgraded. Utah did actually at wide receiver overall. When you look at Pagan, the Utah State transfer coming in, all Mountain West caliber guy too, and still some really strong returning pieces on defense, especially in that secondary. A Utah team that should still have really strong coaching, as I mentioned, with Morgan Scalley. And when you got that guy at quarterback, and I think Devin Dampier is that guy, Drake, you got a chance. So I could absolutely see a 10-win season once again for this Utah team.
Yeah, it is the soft launching point that, to me, gives Utah a big leg up down the stretch to have the confidence to continue to win as the season goes on. With Brett McMurphy, and for those that are listening on audio, he has Notre Dame, Georgia, Ohio State, Miami. No big surprises there. Texas, which has not worked out in the last few years greatly. So he's got Texas Tech in there, so 2 Big 12 teams, which is awesome. Indiana at the 7 spot. In the 8-hole, Oregon, 9th, Utah in the college football playoff. Texas A&M at 10. Oklahoma is back at 11. And UTSA is the group of 5 representative as the 12 seed playing Texas. He has Notre Dame winning the whole thing, by the way. I disagree with a lot of this college football playoff, but it is the way too early, so I'll give Brett McMurphy a free pass there. What does this say about the Utah brand, that despite losing everything they lost, they're still at the top of mind for guys like Brett McMurphy to pick them in the college football playoff after losing their head coach and the entire O-line?
Yeah, I think it speaks to the confidence that everyone has in Morgan Scalley, a guy who's been the head coach and waiting for a very long time for a reason. When you have a guy like Morgan Scalley, an elite coordinator at your program, you do everything you can to keep him around and make him the next guy when he takes over. Similar to when Urban Meyer stepped down. Ryan Day was the one who got promoted. I know people have lots of opinions on Ryan Day. That's a coach of a national championship team still. Lincoln Riley, when he was at Oklahoma, helped them get to the playoff several times there. Hasn't worked out great at USC, but those guys have won at a very high level. And I think Morgan is going to win at a very high level with Utah. I think when you look at a team like a Utah too, what Brett Murphy probably sees is the returning quarterback. It's the most important position on the field, right, Drake? Yes, you can overcome it with other things, but when you have that quarterback, it makes all the difference in the world. And I think with what Devin Dampier showed, especially, he was playing injured for most of the season and still was the Big 12 newcomer of the year. He's one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the country. He can get it done with his arm and his legs. I'm expecting big things out of him. And yes, Utah has a lot of work to do on the offensive line, but I don't think they'll be bad next year. Utah did not have Spencer Fano or Caleb Lomu, two future first-round offensive tackles off the board in the NFL draft. It was two backup tackles, and those guys both still excelled. One of them for sure going to be a starter next year. The other, questions about his eligibility, if he's going to be back or not too. But even though you lose a lot on the coaching staff, there's still a decent amount there depth-wise that should be able to step in and replace. Like, Utah's lost NFL-caliber defensive backs over the years, and they always have really good players there, right? That's a large credit due to Sharif Shaw, but I expect this Utah team to be among the elite in the Big 12 once again. Where do you have Utah right now, Drake? I'm curious. Are they in your top five?
I struggle to say top five definitively because I really like what Houston's doing. Obviously, BYU and Texas Tech will be I think will be at the top of the conference under that sexy pick, and I'm buying that. Noah Fafita's back. No one's talking about that, by the way. No one seems to care that Noah Fafita's back. But the Big 12's got, pardon me, I think they're going to be a little more ass at the bottom this year than what we've had the last few years. Yeah, I think Arizona State has a resurgence this year too. I think they'll finish above Utah. I think West Virginia will fall in line to what Houston did in year 2 under Willie Fritz. I think West Virginia wins 8, maybe 9 games and surprises a lot of people. Oklahoma State, I've got a lot of faith in what Eric Morris is doing, but Kansas State lost its head coach. And Iowa State lost its head coach. And I don't love where Kansas is right now. I don't
Baylor?
love where Iowa State. I don't like where Baylor is right now. I don't like where TCU. I don't love where TCU is. They're just that, all right, 7-5, 8-4, 9-3. Pick one, throw a dart at it. Great. Utah, new head coach, new O-line. Same quarterback, yes. New offensive coordinator. There are a lot of questions about Utah, and of the teams that have a ton of questions, Iowa State, Kansas State, Kansas is again up there. The Utah, Cincinnati, I think will be bad next year. The Utah Utes, I have the most confidence in, of that tier of, hey, this could go really bad, or it could surprise a lot of people. I've got Utah in the surprise a lot of people category in that 5, 6, 7 spot in the Big 12, finishing 8-4, 9-3. So contending for a Big 12 championship into the final couple of weekends. But I don't think any Utah fans should be upset. Don't throw rocks at that. 8-4 next year after what you lost, what you went through in the offseason. I think that'd be a pretty big win.
Oh, it'd be a massive win, as you mentioned. So much of this staff, the players went to Michigan with Kyle Whittingham. So many off to the NFL draft. So if you are at least just in the conversation multiple weeks into the season to still be among the Big 12's best, and you finish at 8-4, that's still a win. Yeah, it'd be a little disappointing with some of the way the schedule falls. Maybe you lose some games you shouldn't. But at the same time, to lose what you did, still be a contender, shows the mark of an elite program, especially a new year with a new head coach, too. That's something that I do think will go well, as I said, but that's still a question mark that remains to be seen. Just like some of the guys you mentioned, Brett Brennan, Willie Fritz, can they get their team there to the conference title game where they're in contention in those last couple weeks, truly in contention? I know Houston technically was if certain things fell their way, but I have questions about if they can get it there. Weirdly enough, I have questions about Morgan Scalley that way. I think that's the Utah Ute stuff in my background, but remains to be seen in 2026.
JT says that Utah basketball will be better than BYU next year. That's going to be, just kidding. He won't. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot. Can we revive Utah basketball? Here is some perspective on the most hapless team maybe in the conference this year that's still fighting. They're still competing. And can they build on that next year? You'll want to know because it affects how your team ends up in Big 12 basketball in 2027. This is Locked On Big 12, Locked On Utes crossover. Today's show is brought to you by Indeed. Look, you all got so mad last time I hired an intern because they went to BYU. They were a BYU student, like, oh, Twitter account only tweets about BYU. Well, yeah, he was like a kid that was enrolled there. Now's your time. Now's your moment. Indeed sponsored jobs to apply to be an intern for Locked On Big 12. And you can apply at Indeed sponsored jobs because the stat says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. You can check all the boxes. Make it easy. Make hiring super easy with Indeed sponsored jobs. Save time. Less stress. Less time, more results. All listeners of this show, $75 in sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support our show by saying you heard about it on this show. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Indeed. JT Westerso, Locked On Utes. Law of averages. Somebody is going to have to suck in basketball. Not everybody can go, 500 across the board. We can't all be even. Someone has to suck. Utah has taken that reign in the Big 12. They have worn that. I watched them live with the night that AJ DeBonson dropped 43 in Provo. But you know what? Let me give some credit to the Utes. They are still competing. That game in Provo, that game in Salt Lake, I should say a couple weeks before that, really close game. Toe-to-toe with Kansas State on the road. They were toe-to-toe with BYU for a large portion of the game in Provo. They're still only lost to Kansas by 12 at Fall Gallon a couple weeks ago and nearly beat Cincinnati on the road, knocked off West Virginia in Morgantown. Is there something to build on here? Is there something to believe in the future of Utah basketball, or is this just going to suck forever?
Yeah, I think what you believe in is Alex Jensen. I think it's the fact that he finds a way to get his team a road dub in Morgantown for a West Virginia team fighting to make the NCAA tournament. And I do believe that loss pretty much officially sank it for them as soon as it happened, because yes, this Utah team is not winning a lot of these games, but my gosh, Drake, are they right there in so many of them? I'm not saying UCF, Cincinnati, those aren't ranked teams, but they're teams that Utah is still right there with game in and game out. Utah, I think, is arguably the worst team in the Big 12. Yet what happens? They get in these games and a lot of them they compete. Like Oklahoma State, it's like, oh my gosh, they blew a lead. But they had a lead. It's not like from the jump, oh my gosh, this got absolutely embarrassing. I don't think a lot of the pieces from this roster will be back next year, right? You get a guy like, we'll see what happens to Seydou Traore. That's a guy who went off against West Virginia and was non-existent against a UCF, right? But I think the fact that this team continues to fight, continues to claw, even though they are so far out of the Big 12 race, they're so far out of any type of NCAA tournament berth, they still continue to fight, I think is the belief in Alex Jensen. He's an elite basketball mind. I think him and his staff learned some lessons coming from the NBA to college when they constructed this roster of, ooh, hey, we took some chances. We did some things here that didn't work out. Let's apply that to next year. I think the way this team continues to perform, the adjustments they make, and just knowing what Alex Jensen's accomplished in the NBA leads me to believe he will eventually get this turned around. But one thing's clear. Utah needs to continue to invest NIL-wise in the basketball, because part of the reason this roster isn't better is because the talent's not better. And they were towards the bottom of the Big 12 basketball recruiting rankings, and we see that playing out now in the Big 12 standings too. So I don't think this is all of a sudden, boom, flipping next year NCAA tournament team, but I think they are putting the pieces together where I do not expect them to be in the bottom three of the conference next season.
Am I being stupid? Am I being stupid for saying, wow, I like Utah because they're losing a lot, but they're losing nicely? Is that just a silly take? Is to be to have hope because the losses look good? That in a vacuum, that sounds really stupid. Actually, am I just trying to make myself feel better about if Utah basketball can rally and make the Big 12 look good?
I think there's a difference between college and NFL, right? But I look at the Seattle Seahawks with Mike McDonald at this time last year. I don't think anyone a year ago thought that was going to be a team that won a Super Bowl, but there were things that the culture started to build and pieces that formed there where you're like, okay, this is building towards something that should be pretty good. Blossomed into a Super Bowl winner. Utah, I don't expect to be ranked at all, honestly, next season, but I think they will continue to get better, be more respectful. I think next year they're going to knock off one of the ranked teams in the Big 12 conference too. I think they can get to that point where they surprise and shock someone. Is that BYU? Because those rivalry games are always just close. Very well could possibly be. But yeah, when you watch this team play, it's not, when you look at the standings, you think, oh, easy dub here. And it rarely is. Utah always fights. Sometimes they do end up getting blown out, but it's very rarely one from the jump like, oh man, this is over. A lot of times Utah blown a lead or they don't make shots. And Utah's not the most talented team. They don't have enough size. Their two leading scorers are undersized guards. So that causes problems against the Big 12's best, but they still fight. They find a way. That game in Provo, I was worried about how ugly it could potentially get. forget, Drake. And for a lot of that game, Utah kept up with BYU. They had a chance to get blown out the gate early. BYU misses some shots. Utah hits some threes, and then all of a sudden it's a game. So that's why I look at this team. I see the pieces they're putting together, and I really do trust Alex Jensen. The GM, Wes Wilcox, used to work in the Atlanta Hawks front office too. It feels like the pieces are in place to eventually build Utah basketball back into an NCAA tournament team. I just still think it's going to take some time because this roster's got a long way to go.
Yeah, and worse than the roster having a long way to go, you got Kansas, Arizona, Houston, BYU, Iowa State, Texas Tech. UCF's even pretty good now. Baylor's in a down year, but Scott Drew will probably have the ship righted at least a little bit next season. Can you build in that kind of environment? Because it seems a little impossible.
It's very tough. I absolutely agree with you there. But all it takes is, I do think that 1 year where it clicks. And I think we will get that for Utah. I do not think Utah will become Houston. I do not think we will look, or even BYU. We're year in and year out, they're a top 25 team. But I do believe with the right mix of players and how good of a coach Alex Jensen is, they can be a team that breaks through and makes the NCAA tournament one of these years in the Big 12 conference. I'll also just say, look, they need to invest more in the NIL, but I do think people get sick and tired of losing. And I think that will continue to take effect, especially when you see you got the right man. And I feel like that's what Utah has in Alex Jensen. So hopefully that leads to certain people NIL-wise opening up their pockets a little bit more and helping this Utah basketball team acquire better players, better talent to put themselves in a better position. But the other thing that's absolutely true is the home advantage for Utah has to somewhat exist in order for that to happen. And it does not right now at all. And the biggest way that will change is if Utah starts to win. So hopefully they can figure that part of it out and eventually become a team that's in the conversation for the NCAA tournament. Not a team that I think on Locked On, or our Big 12 squad show a few weeks ago, Drake, I said I thought Utah would win like 3 Big 12 games on the season, and they've only won 2 so far. And they're running out of time to win that last one. So got work to do, but I still think it's possible in this conference. Utah football's done it. I think the basketball can get to that point too, even though the Big 12 is a gauntlet for college basketball.
JT, where can Locked On Big 12 listeners find more of your work?
You guys can head over to Locked On Utes on YouTube as well as on X as well. Locked On Utes, my personal handle at JT Wistersill, and from time to time on the squad show as well with you, Mr. Drake Toll, rocking the Olympic gear, which we greatly appreciate out in Utah.
Yeah. LockedOnBig12.supercast.com. LockedOnUtes.supercast.com. Either of those sites will take you where you need to go to become the everydayer and join that everydayer club. It's JT Wistersill, Drake Toll with you. This has been and always will be Locked On. Thank you for making these shows your first listen every single day. A crossover with Utes and Dose Grande.